You know how people say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Well, turns out that doesn't apply when your marriage crashes into a fiery heap right off the Vegas Strip. My name's Jack Lawson. I'm a born and bred Nevadan, raised in Reno, moved to Vegas for love, stayed for irony. I used to believe in fate, not in a cheesy, horoscope kind of way, but in that everything happens for a reason kind of deal. That belief got its ass kicked on a Tuesday in July. My wife, Candace, worked at the Bellagio. She was one of those glittering floor managers who floated across the casino in heels like she owned the damn place. Smart, sharp, prettier than anyone should legally be before noon. I was a freelance web designer. Home most days, making websites for chiropractors and vape shops. Basically, I brought in enough to afford DoorDash without guilt. Our marriage was decent, at least I thought so. A little low on passion lately, sure, but I chalked it up to the Vegas lifestyle. Late shifts, loud nights, neon fatigue. You get used to the glow. Then came him. His name was Darren Drake. No, I'm not kidding. Darren freaking Drake. Like a Bond villain who owns a yacht called Tax Shelter. He was some Silicon Valley venture capitalist who visited Vegas twice a month and had a thing for baccarat and blondes. My wife being both. It started subtly. Candace's after-hours staff meetings turned into networking mixers, which turned into don't wait up, babe. One day, she came home with a necklace that could have paid off my student loans. I asked, where'd that come from? And she just said, a client tipped me. Tipped her. Like she was a blackjack dealer and not, my wife. But the real red flag? She started humming again. Not just in the shower, but while brushing her hair, making toast, sipping wine. The kind of humming people do when they've got a secret they like. And that's when I knew something was up. Naturally, I went full Nancy Drew. Checked her phone, nothing. She was smarter than that. But her iPad? Jackpot. Apple's syncing magic delivered me texts I can never unsee. Darren, last night was electric. Let's skip the charade next time and go straight to your place. Candace, you're bad. I like it. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just stood in our kitchen, holding that iPad like it was the Ark of the Covenant, while my toaster kept ejecting the same burnt slice of bread I'd forgotten about 3 times in a row. Then, here comes the kicker. I decided to do something I probably wouldn't recommend to anyone with a therapist. I messaged Darren's wife. Her name was Veronica Drake, and she was a goddess in Gucci heels and a trench coat of silent rage. I found her on Instagram, your standard CEO wife with curated beige aesthetic page, and slid into her DMs with, "Hi Veronica. This might sound crazy, but I think your husband is sleeping with my wife. Would you be open to a quick chat?" She responded in 4 minutes. 4. Not that I was counting. We met at a coffee shop just off Fremont Street, neutral ground, lots of witnesses. She walked in like a woman who'd already gone through the stages of grief and arrived at controlled vengeance. "You must be Jack," she said, sliding into the booth like a CIA agent. "He's been doing this for years. But this time, he messed up. He got sloppy. And he chose a woman with a husband who has nothing to lose." That was the moment I realized I wasn't alone. There's something oddly comforting about being cheated on with someone else. Like group therapy, but with revenge plots. "So," she said, sipping her espresso with terrifying poise. "You in?" I nodded before my brain even caught up. Let's ruin their lives. And just like that, we were a team. Team Petty. Team Heartbreak. Team Justified Crazy. It was the beginning of a twisted partnership, 2 wounded souls with too much time and not enough pity. We didn't know where this plan would take us yet. All I knew was, I wasn't just Jack the web designer anymore. I was Jack, co-founder of Operation Payback. I never imagined I'd end up sitting in a swanky downtown cafe across from a woman who looked like she walked out of a Vogue photo shoot, sipping an oat milk latte while we quietly conspired to blow up our cheating spouses' lives. But hey, Vegas. Veronica Drake. That was her name. Wife of Darren Drake. The same Darren who was currently warming the sheets of my wife, Candace. I half expected Veronica to throw her drink in my face or call me a liar when I told her what was going on. But no, she didn't even flinch. Just raised one perfectly arched eyebrow and said, "Finally." Finally. I blinked. She nodded, taking a slow sip of her latte like this was just Tuesday. "I've known about Darren's little side projects for years. But your wife? That's new. And frankly, that's a wrinkle." She said it like we were talking about a bad investment or a parking ticket, not 2 people screwing around like the rent was due in seconds. I didn't know whether to be impressed or terrified. "So, you're not mad?" I asked, still trying to wrap my head around her calm. Oh, I'm livid, she said sweetly. But I'm also civilized. I don't scream. I strategize. Let me tell you something. There are moments in life when you realize you're completely out of your depth. Sitting across from Veronica, I had that moment. I was a guy who owned 3 pairs of jeans, all slightly stained. She probably had color-coded spreadsheets for her passive-aggressive revenge. Still, she didn't scare me. I think I was too broken for that. What do you want to do? I asked, half afraid the answer would involve blackmail, explosives, or a PowerPoint presentation. She smiled. We make them look like fools. Publicly. Cleanly. Elegantly. Right? I said, trying to sound like I understood. So, like a scandal? Exactly. She leaned in a little, lowering her voice. But we do it smart. We catch them in the act, document it, and then we present it. Not like angry spouses, but like prosecutors. They think they're untouchable. Let's touch them. Okay, I said, still catching up. How do we start? You have access to your wife's calendar? Yeah. Her iPad syncs to our desktop. She never turned it off. She smirked. Amateurs. So with Veronica taking the lead like she was running a corporate hostile takeover, we made a plan. Nothing wild, just surveillance, some smart snooping, and maybe a little theatrical reveal down the road. She had a friend, Miguel, who worked in private security and owed her a favor. I didn't ask why. I was afraid the answer would involve a body and a desert. We set the date. That Friday, Candace and Darren had a business dinner scheduled. Translation: dinner, drinks, a suite at the Wynn, and enough lies to fill a congressional hearing. That night, I put on the one blazer I owned, an old corduroy number I'd bought for a job interview in 2013 and hadn't worn since. I looked like a math teacher on date night. Veronica, on the other hand, looked like she had lawyers on speed dial and a taser in her purse. She drove us in a BMW that probably cost more than my entire existence. We followed them from the Bellagio valet to the Wynn. Miguel was already there, dressed like a bored tourist, but moving like he'd done this 100 times. He gave us the nod and disappeared. I sat in the car across the street, fingers tapping on my thighs like a nervous metronome, while Veronica calmly scrolled through her phone. You okay? She asked without looking up. Yeah, I lied. Just weird seeing it all come apart like this. Feels like I'm in someone else's life. You're not, she said. You're just in the part of your own story where everything gets very, very real. We waited. An hour passed. Then Miguel returned, slipped a flash drive into Veronica's palm, and said, It's all there. Crystal clear footage. Room 4312. Enjoy the show. Veronica thanked him with a nod and tucked the drive into her purse like it was nothing more than a receipt. We didn't watch it until we were back at her place, a slick high-rise that smelled like eucalyptus and revenge. She plugged it into her laptop, and there they were, Candace and Darren, all over each other like 2 teenagers who just discovered they had hormones. Candace was laughing that fake little giggle I used to think was adorable. Now it sounded like nails on a chalkboard. Veronica didn't say much. Just watched with her jaw tight, expression unreadable. I sat on the edge of her couch, unsure if I should be angry, sad, or just deeply embarrassed. After a few minutes, she shut the laptop. That's all we need, she said quietly. We let them have their weekend. Then we planned the encore. She offered me a drink, something dark and smooth I couldn't pronounce, and we sat in silence for a while, 2 strangers linked by betrayal and a shared appetite for justice. I used to think she was the love of my life, I murmured after a long pause. Veronica didn't respond right away. When she did, it wasn't snide or sarcastic like I expected. I used to think he was the only man I'd ever need. And there it was. The raw truth, hanging in the air like Vegas heat. No flotation. No sudden sparks. Just 2 broken people quietly realizing they were in the same wreckage. We didn't hug. Didn't even touch. But in that moment, I think we both understood something important. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about taking our lives back, piece by piece, day by day. You know how they say revenge is a dish best served cold? That's because nobody has the stomach for it hot. Cold revenge is calculated, methodical. It comes with spreadsheets, USB drives, and in our case, hotel surveillance footage with 1080p clarity and surprisingly good audio. It had been 2 days since Veronica and I sat in her apartment watching our spouses roll around a Wynn suite like a pair of caffeinated weasels. We didn't speak much that night. Didn't need to. There's a kind of quiet between 2 people who both just lost something too familiar, too raw, and too fresh to name. When I left her place, the air in Vegas was that kind of dry you could sandwood with. I walked past a street performer dressed as Elvis and a guy selling magic crystals and thought, Jesus, I used to think this city was romantic. The next morning, I texted Veronica. We still on for the plan? She replied in exactly 7 seconds. Of course, I don't half-bake my betrayals. So, yeah, we were still on. We met at a quiet bar in Summerlin, one of those places that sells cocktails in jars and smells like reclaimed wood and eucalyptus. Veronica came dressed like a woman who could ruin your credit score with a phone call. I showed up in cargo shorts. Balance. Here's what I'm thinking, she said, opening a manila folder like we were auditioning for a role in Ocean's 11, Domestic Edition. We'll do it at the fundraiser next Saturday. The charity gala? I blinked. Like, the one? Black tie, red carpet, champagne with gold flecks in it. She nodded. It's their favorite event. Candace always shows up in a dress that costs more than a semester of college, and Darren donates just enough to make people forget he's a walking midlife crisis. And we're going to crash it? She slid a USB drive across the table. Not exactly. We're going to sponsor a video presentation. Now, I may be a web designer, but I also know a trap when I see one. Are you telling me you're going to play the spicy video at a charity event? God, no, she scoffed. I have class. We're going to play a tasteful little highlight reel. A few shots. A few texts. Just enough to raise eyebrows and start whispers. I couldn't lie. I was impressed. It wasn't just revenge. It was theater. And the best part? It wouldn't be us doing the talking. The video would do the heavy lifting while we enjoyed tiny meatballs on sticks. Still, I had questions. And how are we getting this video into a black tie event full of rich people who think gossip is something unseemly? She smiled. The event is managed by a PR firm I used to consult for. The new girl they hired? She thinks I'm a marketing guru. Which, to be fair, I am. I leaned back in my chair, blinking at her. You scare me in a very elegant way. You'll get used to it. Over the next few days, we worked like spies on a deadline. Veronica handled the social engineering stuff, names, invitations, logistics. I handled the tech. I pieced together a video that started with photos of Candace and Darren getting cozy at various hotel bars, intercut with messages like, next time let's not leave the suite at all, and hope Jack doesn't get suspicious. Subtle. Real subtle, Candace. I laid a moody soundtrack under it, nothing too dramatic. Just enough to make it feel like a high-end expose on adultery and bad taste. By Friday, the video was done. Veronica watched it in silence, arms crossed, a slight frown on her face. Then she said, You ever think maybe we're going too far? I laughed. Only every 5 minutes. There was a pause. A long one. She looked out the window. I used to throw that gala with Darren. Smiling for cameras. Laughing with people who probably knew more than I did. I know the feeling, I said. I used to think every guy who looked at Candace was a threat. Turns out, I should have been worried about the ones she smiled back at. And that right there? That was our bond. Not the revenge. Not the video. Just two people trying to piece together their shattered pride without crying in public. Veronica stood up, brushing imaginary dust off her blazer. Okay. Showtime is tomorrow night. You ready? I wasn't. Not really. But I nodded anyway. Yeah. We parted ways with a plan. A USB. There are moments in life that feel like the universe is holding its breath just to see if you'll trip. The charity gala was one of those moments. Saturday night arrived, and Las Vegas was doing what it does best, being just a little too much of everything. Neon lit the skyline like it had something to prove, and the strip was buzzing with tourists trying to make bad decisions look glamorous. I pulled up to the Four Seasons wearing the first tux I'd worn since prom. Back then, I'd rented it from a place called Tux Town. This one came from Veronica's tailor, who measured me like he was preparing me for trial, not revenge. I looked sharp enough to walk into a room full of the city's elite without anyone guessing I was here to quietly detonate a social grenade. Veronica was already inside, working the room like a seasoned diplomat. She was wearing a deep emerald dress that whispered power with every step. She gave me a subtle nod as I entered. Not a smile, just acknowledgement. Like, we're really doing this. And we were. The ballroom was decked out like a movie set. Crystal chandeliers, waiters gliding around with trays of overpriced appetizers. A jazz band playing so smooth it made you forget your date was plotting public humiliation. Darren and Candace arrived fashionably late, of course. She wore red, because of course she did. He looked like someone who tried to dress casual rich and ended up in a blazer that probably had its own accountant. They walked in like they owned the place, laughing, kissing cheeks, smiling like they hadn't just been caught playing house in a hotel suite on someone else's dime and time. I stood by the bar, sipping what was allegedly champagne, but tasted like sparkling apple juice with a superiority complex. Veronica sidled up next to me. "Ready?" she whispered. "Born ready," I whispered back. I was not, in fact, born ready. I was nervous as hell and my left sock was slipping down, but this was not the time for vulnerability. Here's how it went down. Every year, this gala ran a short video presentation midway through the night, highlighting past charitable projects, big donors, smiling children. You know the drill. Thanks to Veronica's connections and a very polite, extremely gullible event coordinator named Grace, we slipped in our own little bonus segment. The lights dimmed. The crowd hushed. I swear I heard Darren mutter something smug like, "This part's always boring," which made the whole thing infinitely sweeter. The video started as usual. Heartwarming music, smiling volunteers, happy families. Then came a fade to black, and our footage began. Still shots at first, nothing explicit. Just Candace and Darren walking arm in arm into hotels at suspicious hours. A photo of them sharing a dessert, 2 spoons, one giant mistake. Then came the text messages. Real ones. Blown up on the screen like confessionals. "Last night was insane. Next time, let's just stay in bed. You make me feel alive again. Don't worry, Jack doesn't suspect a thing." That emoji hit me harder than the rest. At first, the room went silent. Then came the murmurs. Then the sharp inhale from someone who recognized the hotel carpet in one of the shots. Candace's laugh had frozen mid-champagne sip. Darren's face lost about 3 shades of tan. Veronica didn't flinch. She simply took a bite of her canapé, like this was just another Saturday. The video ended not with a bang, but with a quote. "Integrity is doing the right thing, even when no one is watching." C.S. Lewis. Lights up. Silence. Then, polite, confused clapping. The kind you give when you're not sure if you just watched an art piece or a career-ending mistake. Candace bolted first. She all but launched herself toward the exit, red dress swishing like a warning flag. Darren followed, flustered, throwing daggers with his eyes. But it was too late. The damage was done. Veronica turned to me, calm as ever. "Well, that should stir the pot. Did you see her face?" I said, almost in disbelief. "Which one?" she asked dryly. "The one she was born with or the one she married into?" I laughed, actually laughed. For the first time in weeks, it wasn't bitter or sarcastic. Just pure relief. People started whispering. Some avoided us. A few shook our hands. One older woman gave me a thumbs up and mouthed, "Good for you." Vegas man. We slipped out quietly, the chaos trailing behind us like perfume. Outside, the air felt cooler. I think it was just the weight off my shoulders. "You hungry?" I asked. She looked at me. "Starving." So we went to a diner. A crappy little 24/7 place with greasy menus and cracked booths. And we sat there, 2 overdressed people eating waffles and drinking bad coffee. Not lovers. Not yet. Just partners in poetic justice. "Do you think they'll try to spin it?" I asked between bites. "Oh, absolutely," she said. "He'll blame editing. She'll say it's deep fake. But it won't matter." "Why not?" She smiled. "Because once you plant doubt, it blooms fast." And damn if she wasn't right. The morning after the gala, my phone lit up like a slot machine hitting 777s. First it was Candace. Then her mom. Then a few mutual friends who suddenly had no idea things were that serious. Right. Then came the text from a lawyer. One of those messages that starts with, "We need to discuss," and ends with you wanting to throw your phone in a lake. I didn't respond to any of them. I put the phone on silent, made some coffee, and sat at the kitchen table staring at the steam rising out of the mug like it had answers I didn't. Veronica texted too. Short and straight to the point. "They're panicking." "Good. How are you?" I wrote back. "Clear head. Sleeping fine. Coffee strong." It wasn't a lie. It just wasn't the whole truth. A couple days later, I filed for divorce. No drama. No yelling. Just me sitting across from a lawyer in a quiet office, signing my name where he pointed and asking how fast we could make this official. The lawyer didn't even ask me why. I think he could read it in my face. Candace showed up at my place the day after that. No warning, no appointment. Just rang the bell like nothing had happened. She looked tired, like life had finally caught up to her, and for a second, I felt that old flicker of concern. But it passed. "We need to talk," she said. I didn't move from the doorway. "You're a little late for that." "I made a mistake," she said. Her voice cracked. "It wasn't supposed to go this far." "You mean I wasn't supposed to find out?" She looked down. I don't know what I was thinking. "Let me help," I said, pulling out my phone. "You wrote, 'Hope Jack doesn't get suspicious.' That helped jog your memory." She flinched. No more tears, though. I think she realized I wasn't going to fall apart in front of her. "Not this time." "I was lonely," she said. "You were always working it." "Stop." I cut her off. "Don't turn this into a story where I drove you to it. You had choices. You made them." She didn't argue. Just stood there in silence before finally walking away. She didn't slam the door or say some dramatic goodbye. She just left. And somehow that made it feel more final. I didn't hear from her again after that. Her lawyer and mine handled everything. Veronica and I didn't talk much for a few weeks either. I think we both needed space. Revenge might bring people together, but healing? That's a solo project. I kept myself busy. Picked up more web work, reorganized my place, started jogging even though I hate jogging. I wasn't trying to reinvent myself. I just didn't want to sit still long enough for the loneliness to catch up. Then one night, I got a message from her. "Feel like grabbing dinner?" "No agenda. Just food." I replied. "Sure." No speeches. No tuxedos. We met at a quiet little diner. No chandeliers. No string quartets. Just real food, cheap coffee, and two people who'd been through hell and lived to talk about it. She wore jeans and a sweater. Hair pulled back. No war paint. Just Veronica. "Have you been?" she asked. I shrugged. "First time in a long time, I don't feel like a sucker." "That counts, right?" She gave a soft smile. "Counts for a lot." We didn't talk about Candace or Darren. We talked about music, food, awkward family Thanksgivings. It felt normal. Good kind of normal. At the end of the night, we didn't hug or lean in for anything. We just looked at each other and kind of nodded. Like, yeah, this feels okay. And for the first time since that mess started, it actually did. You'd think that once the dust settles, once the legal stuff is done and the cheaters scurry off into the shadows, everything would go back to normal. But the truth is, there is no back after something like that. There's just forward. And figuring out what the hell that even looks like. The divorce was finalized in early June. I remember because I got the email while sitting in my truck, eating a gas station sandwich, halfway through changing the oil on a client's company website. Real glamorous stuff. I opened the message, scrolled through the legal jargon, and saw the final line. Decree granted. Divorce finalized. No confetti. No moment of closure. Just a sandwich that suddenly tasted better. I didn't call anyone. I didn't tell Veronica until a few days later when we were walking through a flea market on a Sunday. I pointed at a rusted metal sign that said, "Happy wife, happy life," and said, "Hey, mine's officially someone else's problem now." She laughed harder than I expected. Not the polite kind of laugh, either. The real kind. From the gut. We stood there for a moment, surrounded by knockoff candles and ironic t-shirts, just breathing. Like two people who'd finally put down a heavy box they didn't realize they'd been carrying. We didn't talk about us. Not directly. It was still too soon. Neither of us wanted to label anything, and honestly, that was fine by me. After months of secrets and pretending, it felt good to just be honest. Even if that meant admitting we didn't know what we were doing. But we started seeing more of each other. Slowly, casually. One night a week turned into two. Then came Sunday mornings, she'd show up with coffee, and we'd sit on my back porch like old friends who didn't need to fill every silence. I liked that about her. The quiet. She wasn't trying to impress me, and I wasn't trying to fix her. We were just there. Side by side. Two people who'd been dragged through the mud, cleaned themselves off, and were now cautiously dipping a toe back into something that felt like life. One night, we were watching a movie at my place. Some old noir flick she'd picked. I was half watching, half reading emails on my laptop, when she said, "You ever think about what your life would have looked like if none of it happened? If they hadn't lied?" I thought for a second, then said, "Yeah, I'd probably still be there. Still lying to myself that everything was fine." She nodded. Same. She didn't say it with bitterness. Just honesty. That kind of honesty that only comes after the worst part is over. We didn't kiss that night. No dramatic music, no slow fade to black. Just a quiet moment, two people on a couch, realizing that sometimes the worst thing that ever happened to you ends up being the best thing that could have. A few days later, she invited me over to her place for dinner. It was the first time I'd been back since the night we watched the footage. She made pasta. From scratch. I brought wine. From a gas station. It worked. We ate. We talked. We laughed. Not just the half-laughs we'd gotten used to in our broken marriage lives, but the real kind. The kind where your face actually hurts after. As we cleared the plates, she said, "You're not who I expected when I first messaged you." I smirked. "Let me guess. You thought I'd be some bitter, balding guy screaming into a pillow." "Well," she said, grinning, "you're only one of those things." We stood there in the kitchen for a minute, close, not quite touching, and I realized something. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wasn't bracing for disappointment. I was just here, in the moment, with someone who'd seen me at my absolute lowest and still wanted to make pasta with me. I didn't know what was coming next. I still don't. But whatever it is, I'm not facing it alone anymore. By the time July rolled around, Vegas had turned into a convection oven. You stepped outside and the air slapped you in the face. But that didn't stop Veronica from showing up at my trailer one Friday night with a six-pack and that look on her face like she was ready to talk about the stuff we'd been tiptoeing around. I was out back, grilling 2 chicken breasts I'd aggressively overseasoned, half hoping she'd stop by, half telling myself not to get my hopes up. Funny how you can want something and warn yourself against it at the same time. Brains are weird like that. She leaned on the porch rail, handed me a cold beer, and said, "I talked to my lawyer today." Now, that's not exactly the kind of sentence that screams romance, but with us, that's how things went. Slow, cautious, always checking the rearview mirror. I raised an eyebrow. "You okay?" "Yeah," she said. "The settlement's done." He signed the agreement. "I'm free." She said it like someone reading the weather report. Calm, factual. But I could tell it meant something. I nodded and handed her a plate of chicken that tasted like a spice rack exploded on it. We ate in silence for a bit, the sun bleeding out over the desert, cicadas screaming like they'd been personally wronged by the heat. After a few bites, she said, "You ever wonder if we would have met like this if they hadn't done what they did?" "Every day," I said. And the answer's always no. "Why's that?" "Because I was too comfortable," I said. "I thought life was good just because it wasn't falling apart. Turns out, it was already cracked. I just didn't want to look too close." She gave me a look. Not pity. Not admiration either. More like recognition. Like we'd both been living in houses with rotting floorboards and pretending the squeaking was just part of the charm. I wiped my hands on a napkin and leaned back in my chair. "You ever think about what you want now? Not just next week, but like, for real?" She didn't answer right away. Just took a sip of her beer, looked out into the hills. "I want peace," she said. "Not the go meditate in Bali kind. Just quiet. No drama. No pretending. Just a life where I can wake up, breathe, and not feel like I'm waiting for someone to disappoint me." I nodded. "That sounds about right." "And you?" she asked. "What do you want?" I thought about it. Not the first layer of thoughts, but the ones under that. The ones you don't usually say out loud. "I want a partner," I said finally. "Not someone perfect. Just someone who doesn't play games. Who shows up, who gives a damn. Someone who doesn't make me feel like I'm constantly chasing their approval." She smiled. Not a big one. Just a small, honest twitch of the lips. Like she understood every word of it because she'd been thinking the same damn thing. The sky turned a kind of purple you only get out here, quiet and strange and beautiful in a way you can't quite explain. I looked at her and said, "I know we're both still in recovery mode. I'm not trying to rush anything, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't think about us." She didn't flinch. Didn't look away. Just said, "Me too." And that was it. No violins. No dramatic music swell. Just 2 people sitting on a porch, finishing their beers, and quietly admitting that maybe, just maybe, something real was starting to grow out of all that mess. We didn't kiss. We didn't even touch. But we didn't need to. Sometimes, when you've been through hell, the quiet stuff means more than the fireworks. I should have known peace was temporary. I mean, sure, things were finally starting to settle. My work was steady, my mornings had a rhythm, and Veronica and I had slipped into something that was starting to resemble a relationship, though neither of us dared to call it that out loud. We weren't official. We weren't labeling anything. We were just showing up. And after what we'd both been through, that meant more than any title. But peace has a funny way of making people bold, especially the ones who ruined it in the first place. It started with an email from Candace. Subject line, can we talk? Now, maybe a year ago I'd have opened that with my heart pounding, wondering if she was finally going to apologize, or explain, or give me something, anything that would make sense of what she did. But that version of me was long gone. Instead, I just stared at the screen, took a sip of coffee, and hit archive. Didn't even open it. But then came the texts. 1, 2, 5. I ignored all of them. Then she left a voicemail. I didn't even listen, just read the transcript and closed the app. Then she showed up. It was a Thursday evening, and I was in the middle of fixing a broken CSS file for a client who thought Comic Sans was an acceptable font for a law firm. I heard a knock, looked out the window, and there she was. Same perfect hair. Same expensive coat. Same ability to show up exactly when I didn't want to see her. I opened the door halfway. Hi, she said. Soft voice. Like nothing had happened. You shouldn't be here. I just wanted to talk. You've had months to talk. She blinked, surprised by the pushback. That's the thing with people like her. They expect time to soften you. They think silence is just delayed forgiveness. I made a mistake, Jack, she said. I know you don't want to hear it, but, you're right. I don't. She looked down, then back at me with that tired, apologetic face I used to fall for. Not this time. I didn't come to win you back, she said. I know that ship sailed. I needed you to know I regret it. Everything. What I did, what I lost. You were a good man. You didn't deserve what I did. There was a time I would have clung to those words like a life preserver. But now, they just felt late. Like showing up to a burned-down house with a fire extinguisher. I don't hate you, I said. But I don't need this. I'm not angry anymore, Candace. I'm just done. She nodded slowly, tears brimming in her eyes, but not falling. Always the performance, never the payoff. Goodbye, Jack. And just like that, she walked back to her car and drove off. Veronica showed up a couple hours later. She brought dinner, burgers, and fries from our favorite place, and I told her what happened. Every word. She didn't get jealous. Didn't tense up. Just listened. Then said, you handled it. I nodded. Felt like I buried something. She looked at me for a second, then said, that's the thing with ghosts. They don't go away just because you ignore them. Sometimes you have to open the door, look them in the eye, and tell them to leave. We ate on the porch. The desert breeze had finally cooled down, and there was something real about that moment, nothing to hide, no lies left in the room. After we ate, she leaned back in her chair, staring at the sky. My ex sent me a letter, she said. I looked over. Yeah. Said he misses me. Asked if I consider rebuilding trust. I snorted. What is this, a construction site? She smiled. Exactly. You gonna answer him? No, she said. I don't rebuild what wasn't solid to begin with. We sat in silence for a while after that. Not awkward. Just quiet. I realized then that we weren't just healing anymore. We were moving. Moving away from the people who broke us, from the lies we thought we wanted, and towards something that, while uncertain, was ours to shape. No guarantees. No promises. Just honesty. And presence. And maybe that's all real peace ever is. By the time August rolled around, I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Candace. Not even at Darren. What I felt wasn't forgiveness, it was distance. A kind of emotional numbness you earn when you finally stop carrying other people's mess. Work kept me busy. I'd picked up a couple decent clients and was spending less time staring at my phone and more time actually living. Morning runs, late-night burgers, small things that added up to a life I hadn't realized I was missing. Veronica and I hadn't labeled what we were, and I think we both liked it that way. There was no pressure, no performance. She came over when she wanted. I went to hers when it felt right. It was easy. Honest. And then, of course, the past came knocking. Not literally, Candace had enough self-respect not to show up again, but she did try calling. Texted once or twice. Nothing dramatic. Just those vague, polite messages that clearly meant I want to see if there's still a door open. I didn't reply. Not out of cruelty, just clarity. You don't owe closure to someone who burned the bridge and then came back holding a bucket of water. I didn't delete the messages either. I just let them sit there, unread. It was a small reminder that I didn't need to engage with the past to move on from it. Veronica had her own version of it. Her ex sent her a letter, an actual handwritten letter, if you can believe it. Said he'd been reflecting. Said he missed her. Said he wanted to explore the possibility of healing together. She laughed when she told me. Not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. Healing doesn't mean going back to what broke you, she said. tossing the envelope in the trash like junk mail. It means building something better. And that doesn't involve him. We were both starting to figure out what better looked like. She invited me to a family barbecue that weekend, her cousin's place, just outside Henderson. It was the first time I'd met anyone from her side. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I caught her watching me from across the yard while I was talking with her uncle about old pickup trucks. She had this half smile on her face, like she was quietly proud. That moment stuck with me. Not because I felt like I was in, but because I realized I liked being there. I liked how it felt to be part of something again. Something that wasn't fake or fragile. After the cookout, back at her place, we sat on the couch, tired and full, her legs draped across mine. You know, I said, I spent so long trying to figure out what I lost. I didn't notice what I gained. She looked over. What did you gain? I paused. Myself. For one. And maybe something real. She didn't say anything right away. Just laid her head on my shoulder. It wasn't some big romantic movie moment. No dramatic kiss, no music swelling in the background. Just peace. Real, earned, quiet peace. And I'll take that over fireworks any day. There's no clean finish line in life. No ribbon to break when you've officially moved on. It's more like one of those long, slow fades at the end of a song. You don't even realize it's over until something new starts playing. It was a regular Sunday morning when it hit me. Nothing dramatic, just me and Veronica at the local farmer's market. She was arguing with a tomato vendor about whether his organic sign was legit. I was sipping bad coffee and watching her talk with her hands like she always does when she's trying not to smile. That's when it clicked. This was my life now. And it wasn't a rebound or a distraction. It wasn't revenge or healing or any of the messy middle stuff we'd already trudged through. It was real. It was ours. After we got home, we sat out on my back porch, watching the sky go orange over the rooftops. She had her feet up on the railing, nursing a glass of wine. I was flipping through a hardware store catalog like an old man who suddenly cared about power tools. So she said casually, "What now?" I looked at her. "Now we live." She gave me a look, half amused, half warm. That's it. That's it," I said. No more waiting for the past to fix itself. No more checking the rearview mirror. She nodded slowly. I like that. And I meant it. We weren't rushing into anything. There was no ring, no moving in, no forced timeline. Just two people who'd been through enough to know what not to settle for. Two people who'd seen the ugliest parts of love and still believed it could be better. Simple. Quiet. Real. Later that night, we fell asleep on the couch. Nothing planned. Just dozed off mid-conversation, like we didn't need to fill every moment with movement. And I swear, that was the best sleep I'd had in years. People always talk about closure like it's something someone else gives you. But the truth is, you give it to yourself. You stop waiting for apologies. You stop needing explanations. You accept what happened, and then you build something better from scratch. Not in spite of what you went through, because of it. And that's where I am now. A man who got blindsided, betrayed, brought down hard, and came out of it. Okay. Not perfect. Not healed in some dramatic, Hollywood montage way. Just okay. And sometimes, okay is more than enough. Especially when you're sitting on a porch with a woman who knows exactly what it took to get there. If you liked my story, please support me. Like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Have a nice day.